Introduce yourself. We're really delighted to have you here. You impressed me with how practical some of your suggestions were. We know marketing is one of these killer departments for it. So welcome to the Learning Lab.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Paul. My name is Ben Udell. I run digital innovation for Lakeridge Bank. We're a community bank in Madison, Wisconsin. That's about $3 billion in assets, and we run around 20 branches. And Paul saw me about a month and a half ago, and then 2 weeks ago, I was in Vegas for the Financial Brand Forum to do a very similar presentation. So as Paul said, my really niche in this space is that everyday AI for everyone. And I would tell you from my experience, this is probably the first call I've been on where my perception is everybody on the call is either really into AI, they're really applying AI, they're really, for lack of a better word, geeking out over it. And a lot of the presentations I do, it's mostly this very AI curious. And in many cases, they haven't even really tried it. They haven't used the paid version, and all they see are the headlines. And so it has been some weird conversations. And I think for some perspective then on what that means, at least in the community financial space, credit unions, community banks like us, I would say generally what I'm going to kind of share and demo today is like the top 1%. I was consulting with a bank Friday a little bit about setting up like an AI program, and they think they're behind on all of this stuff. And I'm just like, you are not even close to being behind. So that's what we're going to kind of work through. So let me share some slides here. Okay. All right, I think everybody should be able to see the intro slide just as a check-in.
Yeah, we can see it. We can see it, Ben.
Perfect. So what I wanted to do for the next 15 minutes is I condensed down what I shared both in Vegas and with Paul on the marketing innovation side, and then frankly a little bit of maybe show and tell. So I'm trying to balance some audience expectations here and just how knowledgeable everybody is, and if anything, it'll be a little bit of a whirlwind on what I'm working on here and what I'm doing. So the big presentation that I shared is basically taking ChatGPT or AI to write your brand voice. And in this case, it's very much geared around writing content. But, you know, I experiment with this with basically my own writing style, my own blogging, my own website. And I don't think this would work any worse for that, really, when you get down to it. And it's really about creating that GPT and then writing content. And so what I'm basically doing is I'm going into GPT-4 and I've taken about 25 to 30 pages of my brand examples. So that's PDFs, it's digital marketing, it's direct mail, it's whatever I can find that I think represents the brand. And as you can see from my prompting, I'm basically just asking it to write a brand voice and I'm letting it go. And so I think generally speaking, this is capturing my brand voice really well with authenticity, experience. I think we're professional. We're kind of this Midwest humble. I think that captures it well. You can see it's starting to pick up in the actual information, what it is that I have in there, some social media, some internal communications. I think we try to be fun, but not silly. I think it's kind of colloquial as well when we think about how we're trying to write to an audience that's in Wisconsin. I think that's a very important part of it. And it gives me a conclusion. I mean, when we get down to it, none of this is necessarily rocket science for what I put together. But what we started to do then was take this and then refine it a little bit more, right? I'm sure everybody on this call is not taking that final output from AI and then kicking it out into the world. So we took it, we updated it further. We added more of our contact information, more of our key taglines. We all know the wording that AI loves to use, you know, like the delve and the realms and all that weird stuff as though it's writing for Lord of the Rings. And we continue to dial that in. And then what I wanted to show you when we get here, because I think a lot of time when we build our GPTs, people don't usually get to see the instructions. And so this is a little bit of a video as to what is actually in the GPT. I like to write at a 10th grade reading level. I think that really matters when we're writing a lot of financial information. I also think for this, if you're not using steps and templates in your GPTs and your other writing, steps really helps with it. And I was happy to send you the video, by the way, as well, if you want to go back through it. But I also seeded the knowledge base with life stages, so cycle data. It's not just boomers, but tell me more about specific areas of boomers. I added some additional direction on what I want my blogs and my emails to look like when I write taglines. And then this is where I get into the brand voice. So in here, I actually skinnied the brand voice up to basically fit. What I was finding with larger versions of the brand voice is it was fine. It was just more information than probably AI really needed to write anything with. And so this is really my instructions within my GPT to write all of this. I've done larger versions, and I think with the GPT, the 4.0, it's probably better at pulling specific files out of the knowledge base. But in some of the original GPT stuff, it was almost like it was getting confused by some of the files that it had to actually pull from. And so I built this one specifically for the Marquee conference I was at, that Paul was at as well. But this is basically the same version that we use when we're writing content here within the bank at this point in time. What I'm really finding for writing GPTs, if you're not, is that I can knock a GPT out within 20, 30 minutes if I know what I want to do. That first version, that first iteration is a piece of cake. I think that last mile, that last 20% is where I spend most of my time just iterating, changing, updating. Maybe I'm putting more steps or examples into it. So now what's happening is effectively, this is my GPT, is let's write content. And in this case, what I'm basically doing is you can see write a blog focused on baby boomers, empty nesters, that ties into the psychographics that are uploaded. Current clients, no checking account, one product. I want to expand the relationship. And I'm just letting it write. You know, in my case, I don't expect to get to a final version or draft in anything. So for me, this is the first version. And from a community bank space standpoint, and I think any content writing, if I had to write all of this without a GPT, I'm going to spend probably a half a day to a day on all of this at a minimum, because I've got to start weaving all of these different topics together. And what I really like about this, because I'm pulling in and referencing baby boomers and empty nesters, it's starting to pull out dream vacations, grandchildren, retirement nest egg. It recognizes clearly that they're boomers, and I can start making that content more relevant to the individuals that I want to work with. And so in this case, I always personally like to start with a blog. I think that's very much a great grounding place, because everything else can start to jump off of that as well. So now I've got to write my email, because I have to obviously write out I got to communicate that I have the blog to my clients. And I think it's doing a nice job at writing that. I do find that it will get kind of lengthy for writing emails in the marketing space. So sometimes I'll back it up and I'll say, write this with half the amount of words, or write it so it takes 2 minutes to read. I find that that type of natural language coding back and forth with it gives me some maybe more readable content in a smaller amount of time, that more bite size. And then the next piece that starts to get important for our community bank space is that we need to obviously create some material for the rest of the bank, so we can have kind of this true actual content. And so right now I'm actually going to write some direct mail. It's going to go through and write my tagline, my sub tagline, my brief copy for the back. Away it goes. And in just a second, I'll start to weave together then a little bit more information about communicating it out. So I think the next one up is going to be a bank message to communicate the blog. And then here we go, internal communication to the bankers, include open-ended questions and some objections that they need to overcome. What we find certainly in a lot of the retail spaces, whether it's banking or otherwise, we've just got to pull all of that together. You know, our average personal banker is probably like 25 years old with like barely 2 years of experience in financial services. So this is a quick way for me to start to be able to give a lot of insights and ideas to help with that questioning. And then what we would also do, and I don't think it's going to pop up in here, is now write a training guide that a branch manager can do in the office that weaves all of this together. And what I don't think have in here, but what I'll use in other cases is I will literally create like a template to start with. So I know that it has, it's a 15-minute huddle. You're going to test for knowledge. You're going to have questions to ask. You're going to have objections. Maybe you have a quiz. And I just use that as a template to allow ChatGPT to really work to support some consistency within all of that. And so that's all we're really doing. And I think from what we're finding in certainly our space with the bank, and as I talk to a lot of other people, a lot of this type of effort is going to take them literally days to complete. And we've got a first draft in about 3.5 minutes. And then we're going to obviously iterate on top of that and create more content. So a huge game changer, I think, for the community bank space, but then obviously for a lot of the small business space as well. And I think what I'm finding as I work through this to get maybe larger prompts or larger opportunities is whenever I'm doing a lot of this information or a lot of this generation, I'm working through it in steps. You saw that a little bit before in step 1, do this, step 2, do this, step 3, do this. I'm getting greater consistency when I'm doing that. And I also get greater consistency when I use templates. So an example that's not in here is if we are writing policies and procedures, we can dictate into Word the procedure because Mary in the operations side of the bank is not a great typer and she's got tons of people coming at her. She can dictate that out in Word. I can then take her dictation and drop it into a GPT I've built that's modeling the format that we'd like to write in. So it starts to have more of the brand and everything else. Oh, actually, here I did. Here's a great example. So we have a health savings account overview. I dictated out a UTMA, which is basically a miner's account. And by taking that blob of dictation and asking it to write like the actual template or example that I have, it's basically putting it together in a much stronger format, a stronger format that's more well-written than anything that anybody's doing. And now I just have greater consistency within all of the documents that I'm putting together as well. And I do know, as you probably all know, that there's always the knock that it's hallucinating or it's not great with factual information. What I definitely find on the financial services side of the world, the good high quality information is dominated by the banks, the credit unions, the fintechs, the people that frankly have to be strong with their content. And so I find the quality of content, both factually and without hallucinations, is really strong. I don't have to do a lot of other stuff as well. So now let me show you a couple other kind of cool things that we've been working on and trying to develop. The first is simulations. And so one of the things that I don't see a lot of people doing is creating a simulation for AI to help with training. And so this is a case I'm going to show you. And I think this is actually a couple that are queued up with the custom GPT that we're basically going through kind of vendor management to get more pushed out. But basically what I'm doing with the Sims to help, in this case, a personal banker work on CD negotiations. The issue that we have is if a client calls us and says, hey, Ben, my CD is maturing, give me a great rate. The bankers automatically default to this person wants the best rate, they want an extra rate, and I have to bend over backwards. And that's not necessarily true. They just want a good rate, and we have to do a better job of asking questions to uncover that. So what I did in this case to build out a simulated role play for bankers is I went into AI and I created 30 different personas for potential bank clients. So that's everything from the 22-year-old kid with $5,000 and they don't know much about banking and they're not really that rate sensitive. They just know that they should do something with their money, to the retiree who's extremely rate sensitive and will leave the bank if we don't give him or her an extra 5 basis points on their CDs. And within it, there's 35 different personas. That's one file. And then another file, as I went through, if you're familiar with the DISC scoring, which is kind of the one of the standard, Myers-Briggs or StrengthsFinder or whatever personality test you want to use, I basically said, give me 20 different personalities with DISC that provide a level of diversity across that spectrum. So then I took those 20 different examples, had a GPT write me a paragraph about each of them as well, and that's a different file. So now when my SimBot is role playing with bankers between the 35 client opportunities and the other 20, I've now got about I have 700 different personas with personality types that get applied to this actual sim that I'm running. And because those are generic files about a client type and a personality, I can use them for other stuff for whatever I want to use as well. And so that's what you're going to see here in a second. The other thing I find, as you guys probably know, is AI is so positive all the time. I really have to push AI to have downbeats or objections or concerns. If not, it's just extremely flowery and it's actually probably too easy to use. So I'll show you a demo on that in a sec. And then the other one I have, I'll show you is a web bot as well. Basically, I think right now everybody thinks these AI tools have to be like really expensive and hard to use. And with some of the web bots, it's really easy to do that. And so let me actually share a little bit of this with you guys. Oh, so this is my, actually, let me show you the next one, because this is the custom GPT one. I'll throw that one out there for you. So it's basically, let's start a CD discussion, and it gives some rules, and it gives some CD rates. So effectively, the customer walks in, and they're going to know what this is, and we need some baseline. And you can see, hi, my name is Emily. I have a CD maturing. If they were in the bank, we would be able to see that they've been with us for 10 years and a little bit more. So I just say, hi, Emily, I'm Ben. Thanks for coming in today. Tell me about your CD. And it starts to work. And in testing this, if you want to be, frankly, a jerk to Emily, she will respond in kind and probably be upset that you're doing that. And so that's kind of programmed into the bot. So you have some empathy and need. So it says, very interested to find the best rate possible. Every client wants to know the best rate possible. It doesn't mean they need a special rate. So you can see I'm basically saying I can certainly help with that. Let me find out more information. The bot's programmed to respond with more empathy and relationship building. I think there's some more iteration I need to do to continue to dial that in. But what's really nice about this is you can program a lot of that in to try to emulate more of the actual client experience. So you could say she's just trying to find a competitive rate between being competitive and flexible. A classic client example, they basically never actually have specifics because they don't know. So we can say, I can certainly help. Everybody wants promotions and higher rates, right? So let's actually find out, our best rates right now are around a year. Would that time frame be okay with you? So she can obviously see the rate sheet, and she's starting to think about the rates that are on there. And what's going to be interesting, I think, with this one is she's just unsure of which path to go, the 7-month, the 13-month, or the 12-month. And which is really cool in a bank setting, because that's basically like every client. They're like, I don't know, Ben, what should I do? How long should I go? What's the current interest rate environment look like? And so in this case, I'm kind of typing in and responding. And while I type, what's really fascinating to think about is with all of the changes happening with the language ability to go back and forth with, oh no. Come on. There we go. With the language ability with AI continuing to pick up and get built into bots, it'll be absolutely amazing to be able to have this instead of typing it in and having the client, I'm sorry, the banker actually interact with the bot just as a real client will. Well, it's not helping me out here. Let's see. So while it wants to think and catch up to us here, let me do this. What's kind of really cool about it is it will, let Like another great topic in here is CD laddering. It basically knows and can get into a discussion, and I'll talk about CD laddering, which to a lot of people on this call may not make a ton of sense or be that exciting, but from my standpoint in trying to help bankers, the ability to be able to understand that type of dynamic is, I think, a really powerful piece with just some reality. You know, I don't know, should I do the 7-month or the 13-month? And it's like, let's split it and we'll ladder your CD and we can start to have some of those conversations as well. And that should be what it's going to do here. All right, let me jump to the end here because I know that was a little pokey and I'm not having a ton of time here. And then what's kind of neat with a lot of these SimBots is you can then program it in to provide some sort of evaluation. And so in this case, this is basically a template that I put together that's loaded in. So now the banker can take a step back and actually receive some coaching and some feedback and or provide that to their actual manager who's working through it. And that's just simply creating a template that the bot is looking to follow when it's providing that feedback. All right, let me give you guys one more example here. And this is off that custom GPT. This was the issue we had. And if you go to a lot of bank websites, this is it. I can't find, the client says, I can't find Zelle in my mobile app. That's a legitimate, easy type of question. And what I did is I scanned every single page of our website from a sitemap. And now I'm typing in the same topic and it says, hang in there, and it's scanning for the answer. And now it actually walks me through the specific steps to get access to it. And it also cites the sources. And so I think what's really cool about some of these developments is it's not hard to set all of this up. It's smarter than the actual web search that we have on the site. And it can cite all of these sources. So if anybody out there is using, for instance, like SharePoint, SharePoint's just a hornet's nest of documents out there. And so this is going to give us an opportunity to basically take some of this actual, the key policies and procedures we have, put them into a doc like this and have a much more focused tool with links that you can see as well. And then the other interesting thing out of this as well is that as vendors come to us and want to do this for us, they basically want to charge us an arm and a leg because they don't think we can do it ourselves. And so for the cost involved of going through one of these other providers, again, the custom GPT.ai, extremely efficient, really cheap and easy, really powerful stuff, easily scalable. And I think it's one of these areas where a lot of the community financials like us just simply they don't know how to play there. And so, you know, that's kind of one of the areas I'm trying to evangelize and get more experience there. Okay, Paul, I think that was like 20 minutes.
That was fantastic, Ben. So, folks have questions, please raise your hand and I'll call on you. And Ben, as we're waiting for folks to get their questions, is it you in marketing team or is there 3 or 4 people that are all using the same prompt? Do you use teams within custom GPT or is it just yourself that's generating the prompts?
Yeah,
the blogs.
So from our marketing standpoint, I run innovation and I'm kind of marketing adjacent. I sit right next to those guys. And in my previous life of doing consumer banking and all that for the bank, I was very active in that. And so by default, they kind of refer to me as an adjunct marketer for them. And so the GPTs I've built are all available for the marketing team. We just basically, they all have access to ChatGPT as well. And then they can basically share that GPT and use it. And then if they want to modify, they can go in and they change the instructions.
Great.
So,
what questions do we have for Ben, folks? I know this is not a shy group. Go ahead, Raymond. Thank you for raising your hand. Go ahead, Raymond.
Yeah, thanks, Ben. That was pretty deep, man. You did a lot of work there. I was curious about how do you measure the effectiveness of the work that you do?
Yeah, that's a great question. So this has come up a couple times, and in fact, one of the banks I went to do some consulting work on is they're a little worried about basically people signed up for ChatGPT and paying for it and then not getting usage out of it. And I said that my flippant answer is I run innovation. I don't run accountability for usage of this stuff. But the serious answer is I think what's really happening right now, certainly in the space I'm in with the community financials, you've got either like the exec teams are like, don't want to touch it, there's too much risk, but they've never actually thought about it, and they will block ChatGPT from usage, but then anybody can go in and use Bing AI, which is powered by ChatGPT, or they can go in and use Gemini, and so they haven't even thought about the IT. It's crazy. And I think the other thing what's starting to happen now is we're getting more of these executives that are starting to use it so they can ask the question. They can dig in, they can drive some of that. I think it's very much this barbell approach where I don't think the executive team can push a lot out. I think they can basically say, game on, follow these guardrails and try to get stuff to bubble up. So for instance, we will run a Teams channel where we can share a lot of feedback. I do the training internally. We try to send some videos out. So when we get down to it, maybe the crux of the question is what's our ROI? I think for the amount we're spending right now, the ROI should be recovered in an afternoon for sure. But we're not really kind of measuring. It's almost like a big sandbox right now to kind of get going. So does that help answer the question in a roundabout way, maybe?
Yeah, somewhat. I was leaning towards like observability, like, if you're targeting an audience, how much time has to pass before
Oh,
you can see, how effective your machinations are.
yeah, good point or a good question. That's actually where we get into some of the other tech that we use in our marketing tech stack. So we use a company called Marquee, which is the conference I was at, where we can run campaigns and see results on a daily basis. And we also work with a company called Alchemy in their segment program, which will show us daily results as well. So we could, in many ways, start creating A/B testing with some of the AI generated content or non-AI generated content. With the size of our shop, with basically like 6-ish marketing people, we're just not getting that in depth. We're creating some content, looks good, fits the brand, factually right, and we're getting it out. I would say our challenge is probably less about the data, and it's more about we just got to get more content out over our size, and the content creation is more important than the data in many ways. So,
And I
yeah,
guess, Ben, on the content side, I guess one potential measure for the executives would be the number of, you're doubling the number of blogs per month or per quarter, pre and
absolutely.
post usage in AI.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah. Great. Ben, a clarifying question. Everything there's so much security concern by executives I talk with. Everything you've shown is not confidential information. It's really marketing and marketing material that's all non-confidential.
Yeah,
Is that correct?
100%. Literally everything here is basically PII, the private information. We have basically started a test pilot Copilot, where Microsoft's Copilot, where we could add some of the private data, and we do. But when it comes to ChatGPT, I just think the use cases are so high with that non-private stuff. Some people get a little freaky because they're like, well, I'm going to put all this, that my private information is my policies and procedures. And I'm like, you're a $200 million bank in Northern Wisconsin. Nobody cares, right? Like your intellectual property is not procedures on how to issue debit cards. You're fine, And so we don't do a ton with that. I do think one of the next layers for me personally will just be more of the kind of data analysis with ChatGPT on my own. Right now, we've done more kind of the writing side of the world for that. And I would also say in our space, people get really freaky about the bias and the privacy and all of that. And my message is you already have procedures and policies in place for that. You don't upload private information. You run marketing through compliance that checks for facts and bias. You should, as a good professional, be reviewing the work other people do for factual information. Like none of this changes. You're just scared because it's AI, not because, and you don't understand it. And you just should just follow the actual procedures.
Great. What other questions do we have, folks? Ben, what's next on your roadmap? Are you looking at agents next year, or you want to get more content out? Is it videos coming, short videos?
Yeah, I think for us personally, we probably have trained, well, we've trained probably 45, pushing 50 people on ChatGPT out of over 300. So it's I think more structurally getting stronger adoption across the bank. I think of it very much like the bell curve, which hits our productivity and creativity and the upskilling. And then I think part of it's getting more the bots. So, obviously a lot of big plugs here for the custom GPT team, but I think it's getting some of those bots where we will try to convert more of some of our internal policies, procedures, and stuff like that that can make us work more efficiently. And then I think it's some of the data side as well, a little bit of the machine learning apps that are coming out. I don't think we'll get too much into video, and we probably won't get too much into graphics and images given how we operate. I think what we're doing right now is it's a lot for people. So yeah, we'll have to get Copilot better integrated. That'll probably be our longer term solution, and like a ChatGPT or Gemini will be more of a smaller group that's using that stuff.
That's great. Ben, go ahead, RJ, and then we'll go to Lucinda.
Great presentation. I just had a question about hallucinations and if they do come up in what you're doing, and if that's a concern and maybe how you're dealing with them.
Yeah, great question. What I would say from a financial services standpoint is I rarely get hallucinations when I do prompting well. And I think there's two reasons for that. The first is the comment earlier where, if we think about how AI is trained on the internet, the overwhelming information out there is by financial institutions that they have to compliance, regulatory, legally get information right. And so I think that training data is just really strong to start with. And so I see very limited hallucinations. Or what it is when I see people trying to prompt and they just say, write a blog about home equity, and they throw something else in. And as we all know, AI will take that limited information and spin out and have an amazing time creating stuff versus, the example I had in there is write me a home equity blog focused on baby boomers who are one product households that don't have a checking account. I need the call to action is to consolidate, and I'd like to focus on whatever. And I think that really removes the opportunity for hallucinations. So I wouldn't say it doesn't exist. I just find it's probably when I'm trying to be more creative around stuff. That's maybe when it comes in. If anything, the problem I'm having these days is that now that my prompting will literally be 2 pages long, it's trying to figure out, and you get this deep iteration where it's like, all right, I got to put stuff into steps. And then up here it says summary, and down here it says elaborate, and it's just getting maybe a little confused. And I think that's where I've probably had more issues, where it's not the hallucination, it's probably the SimBots I'm working on. It's the kind of quality of that, and I spend a lot of time iterating to try to get those bugs out of it, for lack of a better word.
That's
Okay,
great.
thank you.
Thank you, RJ. Lucinda, your last question, then we'll go to open mic. Go ahead, Lucinda.
Yeah, sure. Thanks very much. Great presentation. Thanks for the quick fly through. So 2 questions. Number one, what have you found to be like the thing that's most adopted? And number 2, do you have like a social adoption strategy? In other words, are there certain people within the bank who are more likely to use it? And then from there, you can kind of leverage their kind of influence through the other people? Or how does it work in terms of getting adoption and educating people?
Yeah, good question. Let me start with the last question and go backwards. As I've done the training, what we've really found is it's not so much the influencers at the bank, as much as it's people that are like, oh my God, this is amazing, I'm going to use it, and this is how. And so then we just kind of continue to do more within their team because of that center of influence more in the team. It's maybe weird for some outside of the bank, but our deposit ops team, most of them have been trained at it and use it because they have a couple leaders who love it, and they're trying to create all these policies and procedures and answering questions and how do you talk back to people or respond back to people with communication. And so for them, it's just like, this has saved a ton of time for them. I think for individuals that should probably be more influential on it, they're maybe not as tech savvy or don't get it. And that's been an area that slowed things down. I think the area that's probably been best for us, we very much are in let's call it the communication business, for lack of a better word. And so for us, it's the marketing content, which is communication. It's using it for a lot of dictation that I can drop into ChatGPT and spin out and create a lot of opportunities. We basically have worked with our core provider the core provider in the banking world will do, they really run all of your actual like financials and transactions. We took 5 hours of videos from an upgraded software update coming, jailbroke the videos and downloaded them, put them into Stream to generate a transcript, then took the transcript of all of the new stuff coming out and put that into ChatGPT, and that's what really fuels all the writing. And if you have to think about, like, if I had somebody watch 5 hours of video and take copious notes and think through all of that, that's not a 5-hour process. That's like a half a week process. We basically just downloaded it and away we go. And so it's a lot of stuff like that where it's taking some research papers and dropping it in to better understand them, or the 1033 rule that's coming out in the financial services industry. It's taking all that stuff, and it's that kind of knowledge / communication piece. Those have been the big wins by far for us with.
That's fantastic. We'll do one more. Go ahead, Van, and then we'll go open mic. Go ahead, Van.
Yeah, thanks, Paul. So Ben, I'm curious about, and your last answer helps address some of this, but you created, it looks like, a lot of data to feed into, in some cases, custom GPT. So for example, these what you loaded in terms of to do the prompt, you had a personality, you had all these personas. Did you use the AI tools to help create those things too? Like I liked how you said you came up with, you had a training video and you got a transcript of that and fed that in. So I'm curious about those kinds of things.
Yeah, absolutely. The persona was really easy to do. I would say that it's a great example of ChatGPT where it's like, I got to use ChatGPT to like dial in what I want. And then once I have the template, I can just repeat it 34 more ways. So I basically did something to the effect of, I need to create some personas about bank clients. I want you to write about a kind of personal story of them, what their financial situation is like, how they treat money, what their financial literacy is. Give me examples of what that persona could look like. And so that's like the gist of it. And so I basically kind of took that and iterated through a bunch of prompts to get to the point where it had like financial literacy and personal financial background, a little bit about them personally, etc. And once I dialed that in, which that might have taken like 15 minutes to go back and forth, and then I basically said, great, give me 34 more versions of that, ranging from all of these different variables from the age of 18 up to 80. And I just need a bit, and it just basically wrote. And then now I have my 35 personas. So realistically, I could build 35 personas in like less than 30 minutes, no problem.
That's great.
That's really
and then
fantastic.
one other question about the steps. When you were using steps, did you use multiple steps within the same prompt, or were you telling it a step and then getting an answer from it and then setting up another prompt?
Yeah, it's a good question. I've done it both ways. So the second way, which is something I wrote for my HR team, which is writing job descriptions. If you think about a standard job description, it might have like a summary, qualifications, expectations, IT, and that one had separate steps where the GPT was basically saying, input the summary, it writes that, input the next one, it writes that, and then you kind of build it in chunks. The version you saw with the CD, that's basically steps within one giant prompt that it continues to refer to. So like step 1 is do the introduction of the game. Step 1 is provide the background and a little more info. Step 3 is engage with them back and forth, introduce a downbeat, blah, 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 blah. Step 4 is when you've both committed to moving forward with the CD, provide the evaluation. And like a good example is why you keep iterating on that is it took me a little while to get some of the first part in, and then now I'm just having a heck of a time getting it to automatically understand the simulation is done. Give me the evaluation. So it's a small thing, but I just got to keep kind of tweaking it to get there. But that's one large prompt in the knowledge base, the instructions of the bot.
Ben, just fantastic presentation. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Welcome.
Really value added there. And let's move to open mic. And who would like to share something or ask a question to the group? I'll start off with Chat Hub, what people think about it. We showed Chat Hub last week. It's a fabulous little tool to really help marketing people. We're kind of in the marketing zone this week. It's Chat Hub. It's a browser plugin. And what it allows you to do is ask a prompt, and then you can see the answers in 6 different LLMs. So what is the best airlines in the United States for flying with pets? Actually, I haven't done this, so and it's walking through and it's showing it in ChatGPT, Bing, Gemini, Perplexity, Claude, and Llama. Sometimes you'll see very different answers. Here, we're Americans and Delta showing up a lot. Here, United Airlines shows up first, then Delta. This one's got Alaskan Airlines, then American. And this one's got American and Delta. So it's a way to build brand, or easily build awareness for executives on what's coming next year. If we think 15 to 20% of web traffic is going to move away from Google to large language models, and there's not the sophisticated SEO over there. Who else would like to share? If not, we'll end early. My goal in life, as everyone knows, to end every meeting 5 minutes early. All right, Van, go ahead, Van.
This is a question for others. Anybody see what Apple announced today with the intelligence piece? I didn't get a chance to watch it. I just saw a little review. Guess not.
I watched part of it, Van. It was, I think, a lot of what everyone expected. They call it AI, or Apple AI intelligence. It was Siri, a few things on privacy commitments, OpenAI partnership. Betas later this summer, coming out releases in the fall is the headlines I took away.
Yeah. Well, maybe
But
we'll
others,
get
yeah.
articles that get reviewed tomorrow in your 7:30
Yeah,
meeting.
exactly. Who else? RJ, Sharon, David? Got a quiet group tonight.
Well, I would just like to point out that although that tool that you just showed, Paul, is a good tool for quickly seeing the responses, the disadvantage of those kind of tools are they don't show you the suggested other questions or topics that's usually at the end of those individual tools. So lots of times you might think you're asking the right question, but if you actually go to an individual model like Perplexity at the bottom, it'll suggest some other related questions that perhaps are really the better question that you should have asked. So
Yeah.
I just want to point that out because a lot of people are going the way that you just showed, but I think they're missing out on that extra added value that these models let you have if you look at them individually and you see the additional topics that they list at the end of their reply.
Yeah. No, RJ, it's a good point. I mean, for me, I found it just a good tool for executive education. We were at a company last week with the CEO and the entire management team. 25% of all their new business comes from Google ads. And no one from the CEO, the CMO had any idea this was going. So right in the middle of the meeting, we went right through what their competitors were doing, and it came up with, I don't want to use the name of the company, but they were different ranks coming out. Now we have a whole debate, is that actually going to happen? Is it going to be influence? And is Google's SCG, which is now called Google AI Experiences or something, going to change? But it's a really good point, Roger, or RJ, that it's not settled. Go ahead, Lucinda.
Yeah, Paul, I just wondering, like, how are people dealing with that, with the change in the SEO traffic? Have you gotten any indication that, I mean, definitely, I understand that some people don't even realize the bloodbath is about to begin, but have you talked to people who are, taking this on? I know Alden, you're doing something about it.
Yeah,
but
Alden and go ahead, Alden, jump in. Is Alden still there?
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So, like with all changes, you just have to adapt. Some of those are dangerous, like the drop in traffic. So you have to adapt to that. And some are just outright opportunities, right? The stuff that Ben showed, where you can really add velocity to the content that you're generating. You know, 2 years back, we were generating 1-2 articles a week. Now we are publishing like 400 articles a week with
What?
all sorts of topics, right? Because it's CPU, right? You just like let the AI generate at full speed on 400 different topics, and as long as the quality is good, you can just publish and get velocity.
Let her rip. Wow. Impressive.
And
Lucinda, to answer a question, I think most companies are in shock. I think, I don't know if Liz, you're seeing, I think most execs have no idea. I think there's half the agencies don't know. I think it's changing so fast. And I think a little bit like Ben said, I rarely see an AI enthusiast on the management level. It's usually deep in the organization. And every now and then you might see it on the board level. But if you really look at the board and the senior management level, 99.9% of those are not AI enthusiasts who are running around with all these curiosity questions and sucking up information right and left. So, and I think all the Google people are telling them, don't worry about it. We've got you covered here.
Yeah, it's wild to me because you can't turn around without seeing AI is important to the future productivity, health, creativity, upskilling, whatever it is. And then you guys start asking questions and they're like, oh, somebody else has got it. And I'm like, I don't get it. It's
I don't know
crazy.
about you, Ben, but a lot of it, I think it is just the human nature shell shock. So if you're at the beautiful beach in Miami and a tsunami shows up, you kind of get frozen a little bit. You're like, is that really a tsunami? Is it a mirage? That can't really be happening.
I did an hour and a half presentation with the Wisconsin Bankers Association. There were at least 12 videos in there, kind of like what I showed, but 12 of them. And afterwards, people are just like, to your point, like shell shocked. They're like, oh, I didn't know you could do that. And I wasn't showing anything like super crazy or any depth. It was just like rapid fire different topics across all different types of banks and their bank departments. It was crazy.
One of the things we're finding is to get real specific on literally what to do that week. So, Mr. Executives, assign one person to do what I just did for your 5 biggest use cases. Just something really simple like that. Or have your own learning lab or something to get the momentum going, because it really is.
So one of the things is that it can go top down too, right? If you approach an employee and tell him, who are your AI employees? Then they will find ways to be productive with AI, right? In Ben's case, if he has 6 people in his marketing department and he asks each of them, who are your AI employees? That will 10x your productivity. They will find ways to create those employees. So that's a new thing that is coming along. Like I like to say that we are a 300-person company, of which 20 are humans.
Yeah.
And
one area I know, Alden, you and I've seen is the private equity firms. They get it, and they are not screwing around, and there's no debate. And 25% of the people and dollars that come out of marketing, we expect the same sales. And it's a total. If anybody's PE owned, it's very different over there. But that's very top down. So anyway, well, that was a really wonderful discussion. Ben, thank you so much for joining Wisconsin. You're really, thing I like so much about what you did, it's very practical, you're confident, you're showing what you're doing, your hands are in the clay, you're learning, you're walking the talk, and that's really a lot what we're about, and it's really what the world needs. So thank you so much for sharing.
You're welcome.
Ben, are you sharing your slides with the group?
Yeah, let me drop them I'll drop the link into the chat here. And then if you guys need to, or that doesn't come through, it doesn't work well, you can find me on LinkedIn, and I'm happy to send it to you as well.
Yeah, and they'll also be on the recording. That should get uploaded in about a day or two.
Yeah, perfect.
Super. Thanks, everyone. Have a great evening.
Thank you.
Yes.